Today, our guest of honor is Theresa Campbell. She's also known as Coach T. She founded herlifeherlegacy.com and hosts the podcast Let's Talk Legacy.
Mhm.
Um, Theresa has been a huge inspiration in my life, and she keeps inspiring me. She keeps me motivated to move forward, and I'm blessed to have her in my life, and I'm excited to share her story today. So welcome.
Oh, thank you, Jenny. That was so sweet. I'm like, oh, I feel the same way about you. So thanks for having me.
Well,
I'm
thank
happy
you.
to be here.
Okay, so let's jump right in. And what I find most interesting is that um, you build up her life, her legacy, but you're still working in another job. So you didn't, some people take the plunge and they say, just get out there. And I like how you're strategic about it. So how did that happen? Like, take us back to the beginning of starting her
Ooh.
life, her legacy.
Okay, well, it actually started before Her Life, Her Legacy with a company a friend of mine and I founded called Genius, which was a play on words for Generation Y, us.
Ooh.
And yeah, we felt like we had this message that we wanted to rally all these millennials and talk about exactly what you and I are talking about, living a life of passion and purpose and playing and living on our own terms, and how all of us aren't lazy and entitled and all of the stereotypes that you hear. And my friend and I, we use Genius on the side to figure out how this whole creating and founding a business works. And we were in partnership, so all the scary stuff we got to experience together. And it was amazing. I called Genius like my training wheels, like the training wheels before Her Life, Her Legacy, because it was, can we make a website? Oh my gosh, we made a website, right? Like, can we go speak in front of a group of people? Yes. Will they pay us to do it? Oh my gosh. Like, all of those things that were happening happened with Genius. And then at the end of that year, I wanted to write a book. And my partner at the time said, you can write a book, but if you're doing it, you need to do it for yourself, because everything else with Genius was 50-50. Like, we were both putting in the exact amount of effort. So I wrote this book, and Her Life, Her Legacy was born after the book, believe it or not. So I wanted to just write this ebook, and I was speaking directly to women, and all of these things I was just kind of intuitively following. And then, so I wrote the book, and then from the book came the brand. And to answer your question, I believe your question was balancing the two worlds, like my corporate job with Ford, and then these businesses on the side. I'm not somebody who wants to be a starving artist, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. So it was important to me to continue to pay my bills, and there were a lot of responsibilities that I had as a result of this previous life, which made it difficult for me to just be like, I'm gonna quit. Like, I have a mortgage, and like, there's all these different things. So I wasn't exactly interested, and I'm married, you know what I mean? So it's not just me in the journey, and we had kind of our plans to have a baby and do all these things, and I like to do things as stress free as possible. So keeping the corporate job was actually really helpful. And blending the two worlds, I think, is something that's not exactly talked about very much, because a lot of people, I think, try to like have this thing on the side and it's a secret, or they're doing it and they don't want to talk about it. And I've been 100% transparent, which has been very, very liberating. So they know I coach. They know I take lunch breaks to talk to amazing people like you on Skype. And it's awesome. So I feel very free because I've been very honest throughout the entire process. So if I go to another corporation during the middle of the day to give a talk, it's not a big deal because it's not a secret. And
Yeah.
it just, people know this is what I do, in addition to what I do for the company, which is great.
Yeah. How do you manage? Well, you said you're very transparent about it, which I guess
hmm
is one part of it. But how do you manage your time between the two jobs, like, and your energy, I guess, too?
hmm So the great part about Ford is we have, at least in this southeast market area of the company, of at least the Americas, we piloted a program called Drive Culture. And this came about a few years ago after like the recession, right? And the company was trying to find ways to retain top talent and to come up with creative ways to honor and value people when they couldn't necessarily pay them, right? So, one of the things we created was this results only work environment, which basically says, I trust you to go out and do your job and do a great job, but I don't care when you do it as long as you get your job done and you still do a great job. So, the balancing part has been pretty seamless because I get up early. I'm an early bird, and I do a lot of my work for Her Life, Her Legacy before before the sun comes up, and then I go to work at my corporate job, and I might go to a luncheon here or have a Skype meeting with somebody awesome during my lunchtime. But the amount of work I have to do for Ford never changes. It's just when I do it and how I get it done, and just making sure I'm still being effective. So I fit in everything that's important to me, and it's like anything else. You focus on what needs to get done, and you do it.
Yeah. And well, you just had a baby, so
Yeah.
how has that influenced the way you handle everything?
It was really just getting on a schedule with her because, yeah, they have their own schedules and that's fine. So, what I found is if I can, I'm not a napper at all. So, I usually just kind of do my normal work day because she's actually in daycare right now, right? So she gets dropped off in the morning, and that frees me up to do the things that I used to do before she was here. And then I'll pick her up after work, and then we'll come home and I'll hang out with her. And then when I would normally go to bed at like 8 o'clock, right before, because I would be getting up at 4:30 to work on Her Life, Her Legacy, I don't go to bed. I take a nap because she's on a different schedule altogether. And then I get up somewhere between like if I go to sleep at 9, I'll get up at 11. I take a 2-hour nap somewhere at night, so then that way she's ready for her last like feeding and bath and all that fun stuff. And then when she goes back to sleep, my new working schedule is between like midnight and 3 a.m. I'll crash on like my personal projects, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm back on the clock, for Ford closer to like 8:30, 9 o'clock. So the time is still there. It's just how I'm using it. And now I actually take a nighttime nap. Whereas before I was never napping. I was like, you just figure it out.
Yeah. It sounds weird to me, but I don't have a baby, but yeah, I guess that's true. Like, it depends how you make it, like you just make it work somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw a woman at the grocery store the other day on Saturday morning, and she had two twins with her, like two very young twins, like in the double decker kind of like stroller. So she had these kids in front of her, and she was dragging like a full shopping cart behind her. And I was like, those are twins. And she's like, yep. And my 3-year-old's at home. And I was like, why? In my mind, like, I'm at the grocery store without my 3-month-old because I'm like, this is too much. Like, I don't want to carry her in here. I don't want to do all this stuff with her. And she's in here with two twins. And I was like, how do you do it? And she looked at me and she was like, you just do. And I was like, I think I'm going to blog about that.
Yeah.
You just do. So whether you have a baby, like a real baby, or a business that you're passionate about, when somebody says, how do you do it? The answer really is you just do. Like, you find the time and you make it work and you just do it. And it's awesome.
Yeah.
Easier said than done, but you just do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, sometimes I guess I could imagine, I already have times where I feel very tired, and then those excuses come up. It's like, I'm just gonna take a nap, or how do you deal with that? Because there's really, you kind of have to manage that somehow.
Yeah. So one of the things I do in terms of like how I can produce, like keep producing work. Is that what you mean? Like,
Yeah.
and have all these different things. So for my business, when it comes to like creative stuff I want to do, like I just, well, you know this, I just did my first like audio program, right?
Yes.
And that was something that I really wanted to do. And what I do, and this is like my trick, like I don't want to say I have to trick myself. I know myself, right? So one of the things that I do is when I want to do something, I announce that I'm doing it and I say when it's going to happen. And then I have to do it because I've told all these people, you can expect this from me by this day, by this time. And 99% of the time, I will have had a draft of something for like a couple days or a week or whatever. And then I get mad because I know the rule, like the work expands to the amount of time, those constraints. And if there aren't constraints around it, I create constraints around it so I can get it done.
Yeah.
So that's how I do it. I basically, if it's important to me and I really want to do it, I'm like, all right, I'm telling everybody this is happening on this date. And therefore, I have to honor that commitment. I have to do it. Even if it's not done, like, you know, I have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And it's, I mean, in a way, it's nothing new. Like, I've heard it before, but I like how you put it. It's a nice reminder for me too.
Because it's a nice pressure, like it's a fun pressure. Because I promised, I had a lot of people take my survey, so I was like, you know, in the beginning you're like, oh, I just got a couple hits, and then it's like, well, if I don't finish it, then I can just email those couple of people and say, hey, I ran into, you know. But then I was like, oh, there's more like 20, 30 people who want this information. I was like, guess I better take my nap so I can get up and actually record this thing.
Yeah.
And just do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. I don't know how. I'm just being honest.
I like the audio program. I listened to it today, so.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Would you have known that I recorded it last night?
No. No, I would have never guessed, truly.
You just do.
Okay.
But okay, in all fairness, it wasn't like I took a nap and was like, hey, everybody, this is me talking to you about this great... No, there was thought. Yeah. Like I said, weeks before, I had been kind of writing and drafting and doing what I wanted to do. So it wasn't just like...
Yeah, I'd be very impressed if you could just do that, getting like up from a nap and be like, okay, here it is.
Right.
Yeah, it was very, very structured, and you could really follow it. I loved it. So I guess the hard thing with audio programs is when you listen to them, you know, you have to kind of be able to follow, and you don't have to look anything to look at. So yeah, I loved how you did that. Really inspiring.
The other thing I'll say about that too, since I want to just give you everything, because we're trying to help people, right? Like get started and do things, right?
Yeah.
Is it was 80%. Like it wasn't perfect. Like it wasn't the 100. Like I didn't edit. I didn't edit it at all. Maybe one spot where I literally like drew a blank and there was like a pause. And then I went in and cut that long pause out. But 80%, like when it's good enough, it goes. Yeah. That's how I look at it. And I think a lot of times people get stuck because they want it to be perfect, or they're trying to put the finishing touches on it, or they spend another week adding ideas and whatever. No, 80% we go.
I like that. When it's good enough, it goes.
Yep. You have to, it goes.
Yeah. Well, then let's get to the question that started all this. Okay. And I already asked you before, but what would you tell your high school self if you could travel back in time?
What would I would probably tell my high school self to keep going. I was never really a quitter. High school was such a very strange time for me. I think there'd be different things I'd tell my high school self than my college self. You know what I mean? So if we're sticking with high school, my world was very different because at that time, my psychology was a lot like, come on, it's high school, was centered around boys, right? And dating and all of that stuff. And it was different because if we go way back in time, my family was like the first African American family in an all white community where I grew up. So there was this whole dynamic of like race relations that were really positive, but it was I haven't spoken about this on an interview before, but essentially in high school, that's when you start dating and all this other type of stuff. But there was very limited dating. So there was this phase where I went through where I thought I was ugly or something was wrong with me and all this other type of stuff, because I knew guys liked me, but there was never an ask because I don't know. And I'll never know. There was one boyfriend, but again, the point is there was a lot of that type of stuff going on and dealing with, well, how come all of the black guys have white girlfriends, but all the black girls are single? And it was pretty crazy. And it was very, like, there were 5 of us, right? So in high school, it was like I gravitated towards these 4 other, we called these 4 other women of color. I'm not going to tell you what we called ourselves in high school because it's weird. And I'm serious. It was like a Nigerian girl, a girl from Sri Lanka, a girl from Ghana, right? And then 2 other just kind of African-American girls, but we all grew up in this like white community. So we connected because of our, skin color, if you will. But we had these like secret conversations, even though we were all in different groups, because I was like sporty and into music. And then we were all friends outside of like our existing circles in high school. So that was like a really long story to tell you. I would tell my high school self that I would just say to keep exploring and keep asking questions, because that's what I did. I asked a lot of questions and I journaled a lot. And I have a journal for every year, starting from like the 6th grade through college. And I would just say, keep that up, because there was a lot of information in those journals. And I wrote my first book, which was called Who Says We Can't Talk About It, when I was in college, because it was all about this stuff that we never talked about. Am I ugly, or what's wrong with me, and how come the boys don't like me, and blah, 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 blah. And just everything, like feeling like you had to work, just the messaging that I was getting, like it was intense. So there's a lot I could unpack there, but I choose not to.
Yeah. Well, that's already, wow. A lot of things I didn't know about you. Very interesting.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. I was like, high school, I mean, there was everything. Like, we were talking about affirmative action at University of Michigan. I remember going into a class and having this girl come up to me and be like, did you get into the University of Michigan, like for college? And I did. And I also got into Michigan State. And then it was this issue because there were people who, so then it was all of a sudden like, oh, you got into U of M because you were black, not because you were educated and qualified. It was just this big craziness. So, again, a whole other world of stories that we could unpack and talk about, but have contributed to who I am and how I show up in the world and what any and all of that means, if it means anything now. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy, huh?
Crazy, yes. Interesting. Yes, wow. Thank you so much for sharing about your journey, and really an honor to have you. If you want to learn more about Theresa, head over to herlifeherlegacy.com and check out Theresa's work. If you want to be part of the revolution, join us at Sonection.com or leave a comment right here. Thank you, Theresa.
Thank you, Jenny. And if you go to my website, I will not be talking about race relations and all of that fun stuff from just a warning.
Yes.
It's a new world. But I appreciate you, Jenny, and the work that you're doing and how you're showing up, and it's awesome. And keep doing what you're doing because this is really cool. And I'm excited to see what unfolds as a result.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.